So welcome to part 13. So in part 12 we had created the mix form with a little embedded form down at the bottom here for the ingredients. Now what we need to do is we need to start adding some functionality to this form, because this is really the center of it all. This is where all of the good stuff's going to happen. So let's have a little look at our notes. So we know that this form, or basically a form with a subform, is going to have two modes. It's going to be to create a new mix and also to view existing mixes for a particular recipe. Now, as we don't have any actual existing mixes for a recipe, and that bit's going to be pretty straightforward anyway, what we're going to do is start off with creating a new mix. So what we need to do is, first of all, we need to check to see which mode has been requested for this form, and it's going to be requested when it's opened. And as we went through last time, we're passing a little bit of text as a argument, and part of that text is a 1 if it's going to be a new mix. So let's have a little look, and let's go into the forms onload handler. And so far all we've checked to see is if the global recipe ID has been set, and then set that little text box to equal it if not. Now we need to test for the other little global variable, force new, and to see if that is 1. And if it is, then we need to create a new record. So I'm going to enter that code right now. So there it is, basically inside our if statement, where we check to see if there was a recipe ID passed as an argument, and we set our little text value. What I've done is I've nested a little if statement in here to say if the global variable force new equals 1, then we want to make sure it's a new record. So we just test to make sure that it's not already a new record, because it will error if we try and create a new record on a new record. And if it isn't a new record, then basically we create a new record. The only times really where it is likely that it's already a new record is right now, where we don't actually have any mixes in there. In which case, no matter what you do when you open the form here, it's going to have a new record because there aren't any in it. So other than that, it should always have a record in there. So we need to do a little bit of testing there. So we can close that and save it. So if we now open the control panel and let's go to vanilla custard, open recipe, make mix, we can see that it has opened with a new record. But then that's unsurprising because we don't actually have any. Now we're not really going to do anything very creative here. We're just going to add in the volume at 50 mil and close that. And let's make a mix again. Now this time, if our thing is working, then it will create a new record for us rather than showing the one that's existing. And there it is. And we can actually scoop back to the one we created by going down here. And we can see that there is actually a mix there. So our new record thing is doing the business. So let's go and have a little look at our notes. And we have done all of that. So the other thing we need to do is we created a little label up at the top somewhere around here that isn't showing. Oh no, wrong form. Well, let's open the form again. Somewhere around here we created a label and we made it invisible. Now that we know that it's a new record that we want to work on, let's make that new label visible so that we know we're creating a new mix. Well, we kind of know that anyway, but why not? It's nice to have. So let's go into the design view, and you can see there's the label up there, and the reason why it's not showing is because it is invisible. Visibility is set to no. So let's go back into our onload event and add a little bit of code. And there it is. New label visible equals true. So if we close that, yes. And let's say make a mix again. Now we've got the new label being visible. So all good. Right, let's have a little look what else we've got to do. Now, the actions of this form need to happen in a specific order. If we think about what it has to do, the main function really is for it to calculate all of the amounts of the ingredients we need to use to create the mix. And obviously, unless we know what the total volume is, i.e. how much of the mix we're going to make, well, it can't really work out how much of each ingredient we need to make. So the first thing we're going to have to enter is the total volume, and you will see that I put the mix volume right at the top. So that is the first value that we need to enter. And so that kind of covers it really. I might eventually get it so that all the rest of this is hidden until we enter a mix volume. But the other thing we need to be slightly careful of is that when this form opens, we haven't actually entered yet the information that's needed to create the mix, to do the calculations. So basically we can't have it automatically trigger to go ahead and do the calculations. We need to have entered this volume first. So we need to have entered some kind of volume before it goes ahead and creates all of the stuff, which means we're going to need to have a little action button, or a button saying like, yeah, go ahead and create. Now I've entered that, you can create. So let's have a look at our notes. We need some buttons, the one we just spoke about, to go and create the mix. We're also going to need some buttons that we've seen previously, abort and close, so that when we decide actually we don't want to go ahead and create this mix, we can click abort and it's going to wipe out any reference of it. We need a close button so that when all of the actual Access Chrome is gone, we make this a standalone application, we can just close the form, which will include saving the changes. And the last button we're going to need is basically to say, yeah, consume. So once we've created our mix and everything's good and we've specified which bottles of ingredient we're going to use, we have a consume button which will then reduce the stock of all of those ingredients. So let's go ahead and make a few buttons. Right then, so I've created the buttons that I think we're going to need at the moment. I've created a create button, an abort button, a close button and a consume button, exactly what we spoke about. Now just to bring a little bit more intelligence into it, we can't actually use the create button until we've entered a mix volume, so we've made that disabled, or enabled equals no. We can't abort because we haven't entered anything into the form, so that's not enabled either. The close button we can leave enabled all the time, and the consume button, obviously we've got nothing yet to consume, so we make it disabled. What we then need to do is, under certain circumstances, and particularly when we've opened a form to create a new mix, is we need to make some of these buttons active. So let's go back into the onload event for the form, and by the magic of copy and paste, I have already done the code for that. So that basically when it loads the form, it's going to check to see if it's new, it's going to make our label visible that says new, as we've already done, and it's going to enable the create mix button, it's going to enable the abort button, and it's going to disable the close button because we don't want to just close things at the moment. So let's just test things are working now. We'll close this and we'll save it and we'll make a new mix. And as you can see, we now have, as it's a new mix, as specified by the label here, we have the option to create and abort. And that will do. The next thing that we're going to move on to tomorrow is really the big one, and that is starting to work on this create button. This is going to be the main part of the whole database. Watching paint dry would be more interesting.